Hello, fellow gardeners and friends of the humus heritage. It's wonderful to have you here today as we explore something that has truly transformed the way I approach container gardening. If you've ever felt like you're constantly chasing problems in your pots, feeding, adjusting, troubleshooting, then this guide is for you. What I'm about to share isn't just another potting mix recipe. This is about fundamentally changing how we think about growing plants in containers, and it all comes down to enlisting the help of billions of microscopic workers that nature has perfected over millions of years. From sterile to super soil, the microbe revolution. Living soil represents a complete paradigm shift. Instead of viewing soil as an inert substance that simply holds plants upright while we manually supply everything they need, living soil is understood as a complex ecosystem. It's teeming with bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and other microscopic creatures that form intricate relationships with plant roots. These organisms don't just exist passively, they actively work to break down organic matter, cycle nutrients, protect against diseases, and even help plants tolerate stress. When you create a living soil system, you're essentially building a self-sustaining environment where microbes become your partners in cultivation. The result? Well, you get plants that grow stronger with far less intervention from you. The unseen workforce. Demystifying soil microbes. Imagine if you could actually see what's happening beneath the surface of healthy living soil. You'd witness an astonishing metropolis of activity. Bacteria, numbering in the billions per handful of soil, work as the primary decomposers and nutrient cyclers. They consume organic matter and release nutrients in forms that plant roots can directly absorb. Fungi, particularly mycorrhizal species, extend thread-like hyphae that act as extensions of plant roots, reaching far beyond where roots alone could venture to gather water and nutrients. These fungal networks can increase a plant's effective root surface area by up to 1,000 times. But the magic really happens in the interactions. When bacteria and fungi consume organic materials, they don't just break them down, they transform them. Nitrogen locked in proteins becomes plant-available ammonium and nitrate. Phosphorus bound in complex compounds gets released in soluble forms. This process, often called mineralization, is like having millions of tiny chemical factories working around the clock. Protozoa and beneficial nematodes add another layer by feeding on bacteria, which releases even more nutrients in a perfectly plant-available form. It's a beautifully orchestrated cycle, where waste from one organism actually becomes food for another. Crafting your living soil recipe. Let's talk about the ingredients revealed. Creating living soil really begins with understanding that you need 3 essential elements working together: proper physical structure, slow-release organic nutrition, and a diverse microbial population. The foundation starts with your base materials, which should provide both moisture retention and aeration. I typically use a combination of high-quality peat moss or cocoa coir mixed with perlite or pumice at roughly a 60-40 ratio. So, this creates the physical environment where both roots and microbes can really thrive, with, adequate air pockets and moisture-holding capacity. The real transformation happens when you add amendments that serve as long-term food sources for your microbial community. Think of these as slow-release batteries of nutrition that microbes will unlock gradually. For nitrogen, I incorporate meals like fish meal or feather meal. Bone meal provides phosphorus that breaks down slowly over months. Kelp meal offers potassium, along with trace minerals and growth hormones. Rock dusts like azomite supply a broad spectrum of micronutrients that, honestly, conventional fertilizers often lack. I also add alfalfa meal, which provides nitrogen but, more importantly, feeds beneficial fungi, and dolomite lime to balance pH and supply calcium and magnesium. The most critical ingredient is high-quality compost, which serves as both food and the primary source of microbial diversity. This is not the time to skimp. Well-made compost introduces thousands of species of beneficial organisms and provides humus, the stable organic matter that improves soil structure and nutrient retention. I typically use compost at about 20 to 30% of my total mix volume. To supercharge the microbial population, I inoculate with mycorrhizal fungi products and beneficial bacterial blends, sprinkling these throughout as I mix. The mixing process itself matters. I combine everything thoroughly in a large container or tarp, ensuring even distribution. Then comes the crucial step that separates living soil from regular potting mix, the cooking period. I moisten the mix to the consistency of a wrung-out sponge and let it sit for 2 to 4 weeks before planting. During this time, microbial populations explode, organic materials begin breaking down and the ecosystem starts to establish itself. You might notice the mix warming slightly and developing a pleasant, earthy smell. These are signs that your microscopic workforce is getting established and ready to support plant life. The set it and forget it garden. Benefits you'll love. Once your plants are growing in properly prepared living soil, the difference becomes obvious within weeks. The first thing most gardeners notice is that watering requirements decrease. The improved soil structure and organic matter hold moisture more efficiently, while the fungal networks actively transport water to roots. I've found I can often water container plants half as frequently compared to conventional potting mixes. Fertilizing requirements similarly drop dramatically or disappear entirely for many crops. Because the microbial community continuously breaks down organic amendments, nutrients are released gradually and in response to plant needs. Plants growing in living soil also show remarkable resilience. Their foliage tends to be darker and more robust, stems are sturdier, and they bounce back from stress more quickly. I've had tomatoes in living soil continue producing through conditions that stunted their conventionally grown neighbors. There's also a sustainability angle that shouldn't be overlooked. Living soil systems reduce dependency on synthetic fertilizers, which require enormous energy inputs to manufacture, and can harm waterways through runoff. By recycling organic materials and nurturing soil life, you're participating in a regenerative approach that actually builds fertility over time, rather than depleting it. The environmental footprint of your gardening shrinks while your results improve. Beyond the pot. Maintaining your microbe ecosystem. The beauty of living soil is that maintenance becomes less about constant inputs and more about supporting the ecosystem. So, your primary job really shifts from feeding plants to feeding the soil. I usually top-dress containers every month or two with just a thin layer of compost or worm castings. This simple step provides fresh organic matter for the microbes to process, and it also introduces new microbial diversity. Occasionally, I'll add a light dusting of specific amendments if plants show particular needs, but honestly, this becomes the exception rather than the rule. Watering practices matter more than you might think. Overwatering is the enemy of soil life because, well, microbes need oxygen just like roots do. I water thoroughly but less frequently, allowing the top inch or two to dry between waterings. Some gardeners brew compost tea or use microbial inoculants periodically to refresh populations, though I've found this is rarely necessary if your initial mix is well prepared. The key is avoiding practices that harm soil life, such as using fungicides or high-salt synthetic fertilizers, which can devastate microbial communities. If you notice issues, they're usually easy to correct. Soil that smells sour or becomes waterlogged likely needs better drainage. Mix in more perlite or pumice. Sometimes, even when you have living soil, your plants might show signs of deficiencies. In those cases, they could need specific mineral amendments, or honestly, it might just take a bit more time for the whole system to mature. It's important to remember that living soil usually takes a season or two to really hit its stride. That's when the microbial populations fully establish themselves and all those organic materials have a chance to break down. If you stick with it, your patience is rewarded. Over time, you'll see your system become more and more productive, leading to some truly abundant harvests. This approach represents the future of sustainable gardening. We're learning to work with nature's systems rather than against them, creating abundance through biology instead of chemistry. I encourage you to experiment with living soil in your own containers and observe the transformation. The plants will tell you everything you need to know through their vigor and resilience. If this guide has inspired you to try living soil, please subscribe to the Humus Heritage channel for more practical, nature-based growing techniques. Share this video with fellow gardeners who might benefit from this approach, and, drop a comment below sharing your experiences with living soil. Together, we're building a community of growers who understand that the best garden inputs come from nurturing life in the soil itself. Happy growing!